My name is Claire, and at 34 years old, I never imagined I'd be running through hospital corridors like my life depended on it. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it over the echo of my footsteps on the sterile white floor. That's when Nancy, a nurse with kind eyes and graying hair, grabbed my arm and pulled me into a shadowed corner. "Hide," she whispered urgently. "It's a trap." Through the small window of operating room 3, I saw him. Marcus, my husband, standing there in his expensive suit, laughing with the doctor who was supposed to save my life. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Please like and subscribe if you want to hear how I discovered the most devastating betrayal of my life and how a stranger's courage saved me from the people I trusted most. 7 years ago, when I met Marcus at a tech conference in downtown Chicago, I thought I'd found my soulmate. He was charming, intelligent, and had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room when he looked at me. I was working as a marketing director for a software company pulling in 6 figures a year, and he was a financial advisor with his own practice. We seemed perfect for each other. Our wedding was small but elegant, held at the Chicago Botanic Garden with just 50 guests. My father William walked me down the aisle, still strong and proud back then, before the stroke that would change everything. We bought a beautiful 4-bedroom house in Naperville, one of those Chicago suburbs where kids ride bikes on tree-lined streets and neighbors actually know each other's names. The house had this gorgeous kitchen with marble countertops and a view of the backyard where I'd planted a garden. Marcus would come home from work, loosen his tie, and we'd cook dinner together while jazz music played softly from the speakers. Those were the days when his kisses still felt genuine, when his "I love you" didn't hide darker intentions. My younger sister Jessica lived just 20 minutes away in Oak Brook. At 28, she was everything I wasn't. Where I was cautious and analytical, Jessica was spontaneous and artistic. She'd dropped out of art school to become a yoga instructor, then a jewelry designer, then a life coach. Each career change came with a request for financial help from our father, and he never said no. Jessica was the baby of the family, born when I was already 6 years old, and she'd learned early how to wrap our father around her little finger. Our mother had died when I was 15, and Jessica was 9. Cancer took her slowly, painfully over the course of 2 years. I became Jessica's second mother in many ways, helping her with homework, driving her to dance classes, holding her when she cried at night. Maybe that's why it hurt so much more when she chose to destroy me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 2 years ago, our father William had a massive stroke. I was the one who found him collapsed in his study, his face twisted, unable to speak. The next 3 months were a blur of hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and sleepless nights. Marcus was supportive but distant, always having urgent work matters whenever I needed him most. Jessica showed up for Instagram-worthy moments, posting pictures of herself reading to our unconscious father, but disappeared when it came to the hard work of physical therapy sessions and medication management. Dad recovered, thank God, but he was different. The stroke had taken his ability to walk without assistance, and his speech while returned was slower, more deliberate. He moved into a beautiful assisted living facility in Lincoln Park, one of the best in Chicago, where he could maintain his independence while having medical care nearby. The cost was astronomical, nearly $15,000 a month, but Dad's restaurant empire could afford it. He'd built a chain of 23 upscale Italian restaurants across the Midwest, starting with nothing but a recipe book from his grandmother and a dream. 3 months ago, on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, Dad called me to his apartment at the facility. He was sitting in his wheelchair by the window looking out at Lake Michigan, and his expression was more serious than I'd seen since before the stroke. "Claire," he said, his words careful but clear, "I need to talk to you about my will." I remember feeling uncomfortable immediately. "Dad, you're going to be around for a long time. We don't need to discuss this now." He shook his head slowly. "The stroke taught me that tomorrow isn't promised. I've been watching Claire, watching how you and Jessica handled my illness, watching how you've both lived your lives. I've made my decision." He explained that his estate, worth approximately $12 million between the restaurants, real estate holdings, and investments, would not be split equally. I would receive 70%, including controlling interest in the restaurant chain. Jessica would get 30%, and the vacation home in Michigan. You've shown responsibility, Claire. You understand what it means to build something to maintain it. Jessica. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Jessica needs to learn to stand on her own feet. This might seem unfair, but it's what's best. I argued with him. Despite everything, I didn't want Jessica to feel betrayed or unloved. But Dad was firm. Promise me you won't tell her yet, he said. I'll announce it formally at Christmas when I can explain my reasoning to her myself. I promised, though the secret sat heavy in my chest. That night I made a mistake that would nearly cost me my life. I told Marcus. We were lying in bed, and I was emotional from the conversation with my father. Marcus held me, stroked my hair, and listened as I poured out my confusion and guilt about the inheritance. I watched his face change as I mentioned the numbers, saw something flicker in his eyes that I mistook for surprise. $8.4 million, he repeated slowly. That's life-changing money, Claire. Over the next few weeks, Marcus became more attentive than he'd been in years. He brought me flowers every Friday, suggested weekend getaways, and started talking about our future with renewed enthusiasm. We could expand my practice, he said one night over dinner. Open offices in New York, Los Angeles. Or we could invest in real estate, create generational wealth for our children. We didn't have children yet, though we'd been trying for 2 years with no success. The fertility treatments had been another source of stress, another thing Marcus had been distant about until suddenly he wasn't. He also became very interested in my relationship with Jessica. You should spend more time with your sister, he'd say. Family is everything. Why don't you invite her over for dinner? So I did. Jessica would come over once or twice a week, and she and Marcus would chat while I cooked. They bonded over their shared interest in cryptocurrency and fitness trends. I was happy to see them getting along so well. God, I was such a fool. 6 weeks ago, I started feeling strange. It began with fatigue that coffee couldn't fix, and afternoon naps couldn't cure. I'd fall asleep at my desk at work, something that had never happened in my 12 years at the company. Then came the dizzy spells. I'd stand up from a chair and have to grab onto something to keep from falling. The nausea hit next, violent morning sickness without the pregnancy. I took 4 home tests, all negative. Marcus noticed immediately. You look pale, honey, he said one morning, watching me push scrambled eggs around my plate. You've barely eaten anything in days. I'm just tired, I told him, but he wouldn't let it go. Jessica happened to drop by that afternoon for our newly regular coffee dates. She took one look at me and gasped. Claire, you look terrible. Have you lost weight? I had. 15 pounds in 3 weeks without trying. My clothes hung loose on my frame and my face had taken on a gaunt quality that makeup couldn't hide. I think I need to see a doctor, I admitted. Jessica lit up like I'd just given her the best news. I know exactly who you should see, Dr. Harrison. He's amazing. He treated my friend's mother for ovarian cancer last year. The word cancer made my blood run cold. I'm not saying you have cancer, she added quickly, but he's the best diagnostician in Chicago. Very discreet, has a private clinic. I'll call him right now. Before I could protest, she had her phone out and was speaking rapidly to someone on the other end. Yes, it's urgent. My sister. She's having severe symptoms. She rattled off my symptoms like she'd been keeping a list. Within minutes, she'd secured an appointment for the next day. Dr. Harrison's clinic was in a gleaming medical building in the Gold Coast neighborhood. Everything about it screamed expensive, from the marble lobby to the original artwork on the walls. Harrison himself was 45, with silver at his temples, and the kind of confident demeanor that came from years of delivering life-and-death news. His office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lakeshore Drive, and diplomas from Harvard Medical School and Johns Hopkins covered one wall. Mrs. Chen tells me you've been experiencing concerning symptoms, he said, and I noticed he called Marcus by name, even though this was supposedly our first meeting. We'll need to run comprehensive tests. Blood work, MRI, CT scan, possibly a biopsy depending on what we find. Marcus squeezed my hand. Whatever it takes, doctor. Cost isn't an issue. The tests took 3 days. 3 days of being poked, prodded, scanned, and sampled. Marcus drove me to every appointment, waiting in the pristine waiting rooms, fetching me water, holding my hand during the MRI when I felt claustrophobic in that tube. Jessica texted constantly, sending heart emojis and prayer hands. My father didn't know anything was wrong. We'd all agreed not to worry him until we knew what we were dealing with. 2 weeks after that first appointment, we sat in Dr. Harrison's office again. His face was grave as he pulled up images on his computer screen. "I'm afraid the news isn't good," he said, turning the monitor toward us. "You have a mass on your left ovary. Based on its characteristics and your blood markers, I believe it's malignant." The room spun. Marcus's arms were around me immediately, and I sobbed into his chest. "Are you sure?" he asked the doctor, his voice steady, while mine was gone. "The CA-125 levels are significantly elevated," Harrison replied. "Combined with the imaging, I'm 90% certain. We need to operate as soon as possible to prevent metastasis. Every day we wait increases the risk of spread." "How soon?" Marcus asked. "I have an opening in 3 weeks. We'll do a complete hysterectomy and remove any affected tissue. With aggressive treatment following surgery, the prognosis is good." 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare for a surgery that would change my life forever. 3 weeks to say goodbye to my dreams of having children. 3 weeks that I spent writing letters to the family I might never have, crying in the shower, where Marcus couldn't see, and trying to put on a brave face for everyone around me. Jessica practically moved in during those 3 weeks. She cooked organic cancer-fighting meals she'd researched online. She drove me to acupuncture appointments and meditation classes. She held my hair when the stress made me vomit, which happened more and more frequently. "We're going to get through this together," she promised, and I believed her. "You're my big sister. I can't lose you too." Marcus threw himself into research, creating spreadsheets of treatment options and success rates. He took time off work to accompany me to second opinion appointments, though oddly each doctor we saw confirmed Harrison's diagnosis with the exact same certainty. He also became obsessed with my life insurance policies, updating beneficiaries and increasing coverage. "Just in case," he said when I protested. "We need to be prepared for everything." They were so convincing in their concern. Jessica would tear up at random moments, hugging me fiercely. Marcus would wake up in the middle of the night to check on me, bringing me water and stroking my face. They coordinated my care like a well-oiled machine, Jessica handling the emotional support, while Marcus managed the practical details. I felt so loved, so supported. How could I have known they were rehearsing for my funeral? There were signs, of course. Marcus taking phone calls in the garage, his voice low and urgent. Jessica and Marcus having coffee together while I napped, their heads bent close in conversation. The way they'd both jump apart when I entered a room, plastering smiles on their faces. The new passwords on Marcus's laptop and phone. The way Jessica suddenly had money for a new car despite being between careers again. But I was too sick, too scared, too trusting to put the pieces together. The fatigue was getting worse, and I'd developed tremors in my hands that made it hard to hold a coffee cup. Dr. Harrison prescribed anti-anxiety medications, saying stress was exacerbating my symptoms. The pills made me foggy, disconnected, and I spent most days in a haze of fear and pharmaceutical numbness. The morning of my surgery arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. I hadn't eaten since 8 o'clock the night before per Harrison's instructions, and my stomach cramped with hunger and anxiety. Marcus helped me dress in comfortable clothes, his hands gentle as he pulled my hair into a ponytail. "You're so brave," he whispered, kissing my forehead. "I'm so proud of you." The drive to the hospital took 45 minutes through morning traffic. Marcus played my favorite classical music station, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my knee. I stared out the window at the normal people living their normal lives, wondering if I'd ever be one of them again. The private hospital was in Winnetka, an exclusive facility that looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical center. Valet parking, a concierge at the front desk, original Monet paintings in the lobby. Jessica was waiting in the surgical reception area. a private room with leather chairs and fresh flowers. She jumped up when she saw us, wrapping me in a tight hug. "I've been here since 6, she said. "I couldn't sleep. Dr. Harrison is already here preparing everything." The check-in process was suspiciously smooth. Papers were already filled out, just waiting for my signature. Insurance pre-approvals were complete. My private room was ready, even though we'd arrived an hour early. "We want to make this as easy as possible for you," the receptionist said with a practiced smile. Nancy appeared 20 minutes later, pushing a wheelchair. She was 52 years old, with kind brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and silver streaking through her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her scrubs were lavender, and she wore a small cross necklace that caught the light when she moved. "Good morning, Claire," she said, her voice warm but professional. "I'll be your pre-op nurse today. Let's get you settled in your room." My room was more like a suite with a sitting area for visitors and a view of the manicured gardens. Nancy helped me change into a hospital gown, her movements efficient but gentle. She inserted an IV line into my left hand, apologizing for the brief sting. "You have good veins," she said. "That makes my job easier." As she worked, she glanced at my chart and something flickered across her face. A frown quickly smoothed away. "Claire Chen," she read aloud. 34 years old. Ovarian mass removal and possible hysterectomy. She looked up at me. "Do you have any family members who work in the medical field? Your name seems familiar." "No," I said, confused. "Why?" She shook her head, but I noticed her fingers tightening on the chart. "No reason. Sometimes names just stick in your mind." She continued her prep work, but I caught her glancing at me several times, her expression troubled. Marcus's phone rang, the sharp sound making us all jump. He looked at the screen and grimaced. "It's my biggest client. There's some crisis with his portfolio. I have to take this." "I'm so sorry, honey." He kissed me quickly. "I'll be back before they take you in. 20 minutes tops." Jessica stood up too. "I should run home and grab your overnight bag. We forgot it in all the rush this morning. You'll want your own pajamas for recovery." This was a lie. I'd packed my bag 3 days ago and it was sitting in Marcus's trunk. But before I could say anything, they were both gone, leaving me alone with Nancy. Nancy watched them leave, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then she closed the door and pulled her phone from her pocket. "I need to make a quick call," she said. "Hospital business." She stepped into the bathroom, but I could hear her urgent whispers through the thin door. "It's Nancy. Pull up the lab results for Claire Chen. Date of birth 7/15/90. Yes, I'll wait." My heart began to race, the monitor beside my bed reflecting my anxiety with increasing beeps. Nancy emerged from the bathroom, her face pale. She looked at me for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. She sat on the edge of my bed, taking my hand in both of hers. "Claire, I need you to listen very carefully," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Your surgery. Something's not right. I just spoke with my friend in the lab. She pulled your original test results, the ones from your blood work 2 weeks ago." She paused, squeezing my hands. "Your CA-125 levels are completely normal. All your blood work is normal. There's no indication of cancer whatsoever." The room tilted. "That's impossible. Dr. Harrison showed us the scans. The tumor." "I've worked in oncology for 25 years, Nancy said. "I've seen thousands of patients, real cancer patients. You don't present like someone with advanced ovarian cancer. Your color is good. You're not bloated. You have no ascites. The fatigue and nausea you described, those are symptoms of dozens of things, including systematic poisoning." "Poisoning?" The word came out as a whisper. Nancy nodded grimly. "We need to get you out of here. Now. Can you walk?" I nodded, though my legs felt like jelly. Nancy helped me to my feet, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders to cover the open-backed gown. "There's something else," she said as she guided me toward the door. "Dr. Harrison. He's not scheduled for any surgeries today. Officially, he's not even supposed to be in the building. Whatever he's planning to do to you, it's off the books." We slipped out of my room and into the hallway. Nancy led me through a maze of corridors, avoiding the main surgical area. My bare feet were silent on the cold tile and I shivered despite the blanket. We passed through a door marked Staff Only and into a narrower hallway lined with supply closets and administrative offices. That's when we heard voices ahead, familiar voices that made my blood freeze. Nancy grabbed my arm, pulling me into an alcove behind a water fountain. "Hide," she whispered. "It's a trap." She pointed to a small window in the door of Operating Room 3 just 20 feet away. Through it I could see them clearly. Marcus stood with his back to us, his phone in his hand. Dr. Harrison was beside him checking something on a tablet. And Jessica, my baby sister, was sitting on a gurney laughing at something one of them had said. She was wearing scrubs. "The anesthesiologist is ready," Harrison was saying. "Once she's under, we'll administer the potassium chloride. It'll look like cardiac arrest during routine surgery. Tragic, but these things happen." "The insurance payout will take a few weeks," Marcus replied, scrolling through his phone. $5 million from the life policy I took out last year, plus another $2 million from the supplemental I added last month. Combined with the inheritance, he trailed off, and Jessica finished his thought. $12 million total, give or take. Dad will be devastated, of course. He'll need comfort. And who better to comfort him than his remaining daughter? He'll probably feel guilty about the unequal split and give me everything just to ease his conscience. Harrison chuckled. "My fee remains $200,000 transferred to my Cayman account within 48 hours of the death certificate being signed." "Already arranged," Marcus assured him. "Jessica and I will be appropriately grief-stricken. We'll wait a year before we officially get together, maybe 18 months. By then, everyone will think it's sweet that we found comfort in each other after our mutual loss." My legs gave out and Nancy had to hold me up. Everything clicked into place with horrible clarity. The fatigue, the nausea, the tremors. Marcus had been poisoning me, probably with something simple like antifreeze in my morning smoothies. The appointments with different doctors who all confirmed the same diagnosis. They were all connected to Harrison somehow, all in on the scheme. The life insurance policies, the sudden closeness between Marcus and Jessica, the convenient surgery date just weeks after my father told me about the will. Jessica stood up from the gurney, walked over to Marcus and kissed him. Not a friendly peck, but a deep, passionate kiss that spoke of practiced intimacy. My stomach heaved, and Nancy had to cover my mouth to keep me from vomiting audibly. When they finally broke apart, Jessica was smiling. "A year is a long time to wait," she said, running her finger down Marcus's chest. "We've waited this long," he replied. "What's another year? Besides, we'll need time to establish my grief. The grieving widower destroyed by the loss of his beloved wife. No one will suspect a thing." Nancy pulled me away from the window, her face set with determination. "We're calling the police. Now." She pulled out her phone again, but I stopped her. "They'll run," I said. "They'll disappear, and it'll be my word against theirs. We need evidence." Nancy considered this, then nodded. "You're right. Stay here." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her personal phone. "Record everything. I'm going to get what we need." Nancy strode into Operating Room 3 like she owned the place, and I pressed myself against the window, my phone recording everything. "Dr. Harrison," she said brightly, "there's been a mix-up with the anesthesia dosages. The pharmacy needs your confirmation on the amounts." Harrison looked irritated. "I calculated them myself based on the patient's weight." "Yes, but the patient's weight on file doesn't match what we recorded this morning. It's a 30-pound difference. We need to recalculate, or we risk overdose." Nancy's voice was steady professional. "Overdose is the point," Jessica said with a laugh, then caught herself. "I mean, we definitely want to avoid that." Nancy pulled out a small digital recorder from her pocket, clicking it on before anyone could react. "Could you repeat that, Miss Chen, for the record?" "What are you doing?" Marcus stepped forward, but Nancy held up a hand. "My job. Protecting patients. I've already contacted hospital security and the police. They're on their way. I've also emailed copies of Claire's real test results to the administration, the medical board, and the FBI's healthcare fraud division." She was bluffing about some of it, I could tell, but they didn't know that. Harrison's face went white. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly. 25 years ago, I was a young nurse in Detroit. A doctor there, very much like you, murdered 3 women for their insurance money before he was caught. I was too scared to speak up when I had suspicions about the first one. Not anymore. The door to the OR burst open and 2 security guards entered, followed by a uniformed police officer. I stepped out from my hiding spot, still recording. Marcus's face when he saw me was something I'll never forget. It cycled through shock, fear, rage, and finally a pathetic attempt at innocence. Claire, thank God you're okay. This nurse has gone crazy. She's trying to stop your life-saving surgery. I held up my phone. I recorded everything, Marcus. Every single word about the potassium chloride, the insurance money, and your relationship with my sister. Jessica tried to run, but the second police officer who'd just arrived blocked her path. She turned to me, and for the first time in years, I saw real emotion on her face. Not love, not concern, but pure hatred. You always got everything, she spat. Mom loved you more before she died. Dad trusted you with his business. Even when I introduced you to Marcus at my gym, he chose you. Did you know that he was my trainer, first interested in me first, but then he met you with your perfect job and your sensible investments, and suddenly I didn't exist? The revelation that Marcus had known Jessica first, that their relationship predated ours, was the final twist of the knife, but I was done being the victim in this story. You're right, I said, stepping closer to her. Dad did trust me more. Want to know why? Because while you were playing the perpetual victim, I was working 16-hour days to help him build his empire. While you were dropping out of your 3rd college program, I was graduating summa cum laude. While you were asking for another loan for another failed business venture, I was putting money into the family trust. I earned his respect, Jessica. You just expected it to be handed to you like everything else in your life. The police officer cleared his throat. We're going to need all of you to come to the station. Dr. Harrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent. As they read Harrison his rights, more officers arrived. Detective Sarah Martinez, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and graying hair, pulled into a tight bun, took charge of the scene. She listened to Nancy's account, reviewed my recording, and immediately ordered Marcus and Jessica to be taken into custody as well. This is insane, Marcus protested as they cuffed him. I'm her husband. I was trying to save her life. She's obviously having a mental breakdown from the stress of her illness. Detective Martinez looked at him coldly. Save it for your lawyer, Mr. Chen. We'll be getting a warrant to search your home and offices. Something tells me we'll find plenty of interesting evidence. They did. Oh, they did. Marcus's home computer contained searches for undetectable poisons, antifreeze poisoning symptoms, and how to fake cancer diagnosis. They found the antifreeze in our garage, hidden behind paint cans with a syringe that tested positive for ethylene glycol. Jessica's phone had hundreds of text messages between her and Marcus dating back 18 months, including explicit discussions of their plan and intimate photos that predated my supposed illness by a year. Dr. Harrison's financial records showed deposits totaling $50,000 from an account Marcus had set up under a shell company. They found falsified medical records, fake scan results he'd created using images from medical journals, and a vial of potassium chloride in his office safe enough to kill 3 people. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. The owner of the private hospital, horrified by what had nearly happened in his facility, launched an internal investigation. They discovered that Harrison had done this before twice with elderly patients whose families had mysteriously inherited large sums shortly after their surgical complications. Those cases were reopened, and Harrison was eventually charged with 4 counts of murder, not just 1 count of attempted murder. I called my father from the police station, my hands shaking as I dialed. When I told him everything, he was silent for so long, I thought the call had dropped. I knew something was wrong with that girl. He finally said, his voice heavy with pain. Your mother saw it too before she died. The jealousy, the manipulation. We hoped she'd grow out of it. I'm so sorry, Claire. This is my fault. If I hadn't told you about the will. This isn't your fault, Dad. They made their choices. He came to the station in his wheelchair, his aide pushing him through the crowd of reporters who'd already caught wind of the story. When he saw me, he broke down crying the second time I'd ever seen him cry. The first was at Mom's funeral. "We're changing the will immediately," he said. "Jessica gets nothing, not a penny. And we're pressing charges to the fullest extent of the law." The trial was a media sensation. "Black Widow and the Bitter Sister, a tale of greed and betrayal," screamed the headlines. The courtroom was packed every day for 6 months. Nancy testified brilliantly, her 25 years of experience lending weight to her testimony about the medical inconsistencies she'd observed. The prosecution presented the evidence, methodically building a case that was impossible to refute. Marcus tried to claim that I'd known about his affair with Jessica and had consented to it, that the whole murder plot was my idea for insurance fraud. No one bought it, especially after Jessica took the stand. She tried to paint herself as a victim manipulated by Marcus, but under cross-examination, she fell apart. The prosecutor presented her text messages one by one, including one where she'd written, "Can't wait until the bitch is dead and we're rich." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Marcus was found guilty of attempted murder conspiracy to commit murder insurance fraud and domestic poisoning. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in prison. Jessica got 18 years for conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Dr. Harrison, facing additional charges for his previous victims, received life without parole. After the trial, I filed for divorce. It was uncontested, obviously, since Marcus was in prison. I kept the house initially, I couldn't live there anymore. Every room held a memory that was now tainted with the knowledge of his betrayal. I sold it within 2 months and used the money to start fresh. The first 6 months after the trial were the darkest of my life. I couldn't sleep without nightmares about waking up in that operating room, unable to move as they injected poison into my veins. I couldn't eat without wondering if my food was safe. I installed 3 different security systems in my new apartment and still jumped at every unexpected sound. Trust became a foreign concept. How could I ever trust anyone again when the 2 people closest to me had plotted my murder? I found a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma, Dr. Linda Patterson, a woman in her 60s who'd seen it all. "What happened to you is literally one of the worst betrayals a person can experience," she told me during our first session. "Your husband and your sister, the people who were supposed to protect you, tried to kill you. It's going to take time to heal from this." Time. I had plenty of that now. I took a leave of absence from work, unable to concentrate on marketing strategies when I was still processing the fact that I'd nearly been murdered. My colleagues sent flowers and cards, but I couldn't face their pitying looks. My boss held my position for 3 months, then gently suggested I might benefit from a fresh start elsewhere. He was right. Nancy became my lifeline during those early months. She'd check on me every few days, bringing soup or just sitting with me while I cried. She shared her own story of betrayal, not attempted murder, but a husband who'd emptied their retirement accounts and disappeared with his secretary after 30 years of marriage. "The pain doesn't go away," she said, "but it changes. It becomes something you carry rather than something that carries you." Dad threw himself into supporting me. He hired the best lawyers to ensure Marcus and Jessica couldn't profit from their crimes in any way. He set up a trust fund for a new foundation focused on preventing elder abuse and medical fraud. He even started seeing a therapist himself to deal with the guilt and anger over Jessica's actions. "I failed her somehow," he said during one of our sessions together. "I must have." "No, Dad," I told him firmly. "Some people are just broken. Not because of what happened to them, but because of what's missing inside them. Jessica was born without empathy. You couldn't have loved that into existence." 4 months into my recovery, Nancy called with unexpected news. She'd been offered a position as head of nursing at a new patient advocacy organization in Denver. "Come with me," she said. "You need a fresh start, and Colorado is beautiful. Mountains have a way of putting things in perspective." It was crazy impulsive, nothing like the careful decisions I usually made, which is exactly why I said yes. Denver was everything Chicago wasn't. The air was thinner, but cleaner. The mountains rose in the distance like protective walls. I rented a small apartment in the Washington Park neighborhood with a view of the Rockies from my bedroom window. Nancy lived 10 minutes away, close enough to be supportive, but far enough to give me space to rebuild. I started small. Morning walks in the park. Coffee at the same local shop where the barista learned my name. Yoga classes where no one knew my story. I wasn't the woman who'd nearly been murdered by her husband and sister. I was just Claire, the new girl from Chicago who was surprisingly inflexible for someone so thin. 6 months after moving to Denver, I was ready to work again. But not in marketing. I couldn't go back to selling products I didn't believe in. Instead, I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping abuse survivors write resumes and prepare for job interviews. It was there that I met Lisa, a survivor of domestic violence who was trying to start a nonprofit to help women escape dangerous relationships. "I have an idea, but no idea how to execute it," she confessed over lunch one day. "I want to create a network of safe houses, but I don't know anything about business plans or fundraising." "I do," I said. And just like that, I had a purpose again. We spent the next year building SafeHaven Network from the ground up. I used my marketing skills to create campaigns, my business acumen to secure funding, and my newfound understanding of betrayal to connect with the women we served. Dad became our biggest donor, and Nancy joined our board of directors. Within 18 months, we had 3 safe houses operating in Colorado and plans to expand to 5 more states. It was at a fundraising gala for Safe Haven that I met James. He was a pediatrician at Children's Hospital Colorado, tall and lanky with kind blue eyes and a laugh that filled the room. His sister had used our services to escape an abusive marriage, and he'd come to the gala to support our work. We talked for 3 hours that night about everything except my past. He didn't know who I was, didn't recognize me from the trial coverage, and I wanted to keep it that way, at least for a while. We started slowly. Coffee dates where we discussed books and movies. Hikes in the mountains where he'd point out wildlife and tell terrible doctor jokes. Dinners where he'd cook elaborate meals because, as he said, "Hospital cafeteria food has made me appreciate real cooking." He didn't push, didn't ask why I sometimes flinched when he moved too quickly, or why I insisted on always sitting where I could see the door. 3 months into our friendship, because that's what I insisted on calling it, I finally told him everything. We were sitting on his couch, snow falling outside, and I just started talking. I told him about Marcus, about Jessica, about the operating room, and Nancy's warning in the trial. He listened without interrupting, his face cycling through shock, anger, and finally a protective tenderness that made me cry. "Thank you for trusting me with this," he said when I finished. "I can't imagine how hard it was to share." "Aren't you going to run?" I asked, half joking, but really not. "Why would I run?" "You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You survived something horrible and used it to help others. That's not a reason to run. That's a reason to stay." We took things slowly. James understood that trust was hard for me, that intimacy felt dangerous. He never spent the night without asking first. He texted me his location when we were apart, not because I asked, but because he knew it made me feel safer. He came to therapy with me when I was ready, sitting quietly as I worked through my fears about being in a relationship again. A year after we met, James proposed. Not with a grand gesture, but with a quiet question during a sunrise hike on our favorite trail. "I know you might never fully trust anyone again," he said, "and I understand that. But I promise to earn whatever trust you can give every single day for the rest of our lives if you'll let me." We got married 2 years after the trial in a small ceremony in the mountains with just 20 guests. Dad walked me down the aisle again, stronger now, able to stand with a walker for short periods. Nancy was my maid of honor. We didn't invite anyone from my old life in Chicago. That chapter was closed. Marcus tried to contact me once from prison, a letter forwarded through my lawyer. I burned it unopened. Jessica has tried multiple times letters full of fake apologies and real requests for money for her commissary account. Those go straight to the FBI agent who still monitors the case just in case they contain any threats. Today it's been 3 years since that morning in the operating room. I run SafeHaven Network full-time now, and we operate in 12 states with 43 safe houses. We've helped over 2,000 women escape dangerous situations, and every single one of them reminds me why I survived. I was meant to do this work to turn my trauma into someone else's lifeline. James and I bought a house in the foothills, a modest 3-bedroom with a view of the Continental Divide. We have 2 dogs, both rescues, who bark at everything and make me feel safe. We're talking about children, maybe adoption, when the time feels right. Trust is still hard, but it gets a little easier each day. Dad is doing well, all things considered. He sold the restaurant chain last year, keeping just his original location for sentimental reasons. He moved to Denver to be closer to me, living in a beautiful assisted living community where he's teaching cooking classes and flirting shamelessly with the widows. He's never mentioned Jessica again, and her name has been literally erased from all family documents. It's as if she never existed, which is how it should be. Nancy retired last year, but consults for SafeHaven and serves on our medical advisory board. We have lunch every Wednesday, and she's become the mother figure I lost too young. She saved my life, but more than that, she gave me the courage to save myself. When I tried to thank her once, she just shrugged and said, "It's what any decent person would do." But that's the thing, most people aren't that decent when it matters. I still have bad days. Days when I can't eat anything, I didn't prepare myself. Nights when I wake up gasping, sure that someone is standing over my bed with a syringe. Times when James touches me unexpectedly and I flinch like I've been burned. The therapist says these responses might never fully go away, that my body remembers the trauma even when my mind has processed it. I've accepted that. But I also have good days. Days when I help a woman escape her abuser and see hope return to her eyes. Nights when James and I cook together, music playing, dancing in our kitchen. Mornings when I wake up naturally, not from nightmares, but from sunlight streaming through our windows, and I remember that I'm alive when I shouldn't be. The deepest betrayal wasn't the attempted murder, though that was horrific enough. It was the theft of my ability to trust freely, to love without fear, to assume good intentions. Marcus and Jessica took that from me, and it's something I'll never get back, not fully. But maybe that's okay. Maybe some innocence needs to die for wisdom to be born. I've learned that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. Nancy chose to save me. Dad chose to stand by me. James chooses to love me every day despite my broken pieces. The women at SafeHaven choose to trust me with their stories. These choices, these daily decisions to show up for each other, that's what family really means. I've learned that strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about breaking and choosing to rebuild anyway. It's about taking your shattered pieces and creating a mosaic, something beautiful and unique that couldn't exist without first being broken. My life now is nothing like the life I planned, but maybe it's better. It's certainly more meaningful. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about the people who hurt you. Marcus and Jessica don't deserve forgiveness, and they'll never get it from me. But I've forgiven myself for not seeing the signs, for trusting too easily, for loving people who were incapable of loving me back. That self-forgiveness was harder than anything else, but it was necessary for healing. Most importantly, I've learned that surviving isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. Every day I wake up is a day. Marcus and Jessica tried to steal from me. Every woman I help is a victory over their cruelty. Every moment of joy, every laugh, every kiss with James, every sunset I watch from my deck, these are acts of rebellion against the darkness they tried to pull me into. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Nancy hadn't warned me that day. But then I realized that every scar, every tear, every sleepless night led me to become who I am today. I didn't just survive their betrayal, I transformed it into my greatest strength. And if you're watching this going through your own betrayal, remember that the trap they set for you might just become the door to your freedom. You just have to be brave enough to walk through it. The sun is setting now behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. James will be home soon, and we'll make dinner together, probably pasta because it's Thursday, and Thursdays are always pasta nights in our house. Dad will call around 8 to tell me about his day and pretend he's not really calling to make sure I'm okay. Nancy will text a funny meme she doesn't quite understand but knows will make me laugh. These small, ordinary moments are everything Marcus and Jessica tried to take from me, and they're more precious because of it. I am Claire, 37 years old now, survivor of the worst betrayal imaginable, and I am finally fully, vibrantly alive. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever experienced a betrayal that changed your life? Please like this video. If it touched you, subscribe to hear more stories of survival and triumph, and share it with anyone who needs to know that they can survive their own betrayals. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and worthy of trust and love no matter what anyone has done to you. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and never be afraid to seek help when something doesn't feel right.